Today is Saturday, the 16th of August, 2026, and it's going to be more of a study than a market recap. It's actually going to be the mechanics behind the models that I trade. And today's topic is the final hour macro. This is mostly for my notes. I normally never post this, but you know, if you're here watching, why not? It's free information. Anyway, final hour macro goes like this, right? It starts at 250 right there till 310. That's the first portion of it. And then after that, you have 315 to 345 there. And then the last 10 minutes has its own two macros, which that's the normal market on close macro that you kind of know. And that's the last 10 minutes. And it kind of splits into one that goes from 3 to 58. And then from 58, it kind of might bleed till 4, but it can bleed a bit longer than that, right? So that's the final hour macro. It's just 1 hour that has basically 4 macros inside it, right? And to know the differences of what it's going to do and how it's going to react, you kind of need to come back all the way to the start of the day at 9:30 in terms of regular trading hours, okay? For this day, what I expected is we're going to clear some sell side initially at open and then go seek all the buy side, and it will just be a normal long distribution day. However, we opened, hit the inverse fair value gap here at 8, and then just expanded higher and higher. When this situation happens, I'll look for another model which normally would be seeking at least the 930 low, right? So if the TPs were somewhere around here and it didn't expand that much higher, then it would have done something here, and then by the time the first macro has ended, we would start doing our short till 9:30. If that doesn't happen, then you know you got a final hour macro, right? Not just your average 10-minute final hour macro, but no, it's gonna be the one where the final hour actually just starts distributing lower, normally making the high of the day, right? So to know the profiles, to know which type of macro you're going to use for the final hour and whatever, that depends on experience. You need to do a lot of studying, and I can't tell you all of that. You're just going to have to do it yourself. But for this specific day, we know that we didn't get the sell side, we didn't get the 930 low, and we were expanding higher the whole day, so barely any retracement. That's your easiest indication of us getting the early, I guess that's what I call it, the early final hour macro, where we make the high and we actually have decent amount of points, right? For this day, it was roughly 130 points, right? Normally on final hour macro, you're looking at 30, 40 points maximum. And that's normally based on the last 10 minutes. Something easy, right? Low hanging fruit objective, unclean relative equal lows or highs, and it will just go to it. But for this specific type of day is the one where we kind of make the high at the first macro, maybe early at the second macro, right? Early. And then we'll start just distributing all the way to our target, okay? So to start this day, let's just get the range, and I'll just put it into midpoint from 9:30 till what we think is the high of the day, right? Just put it as a CE for now and just come back to it later. So that was the high of the day until our PM session starts right here, and the PM session starts at 1:30. Think of the opening range, it kind of makes like an engineered range that will make engineered sell side or buy side, right? And if we put a vertical line at 130 is right there. So that starts our PM session. And when we don't have a high, right, at 1:30 or just after it, I normally take just the first swing high, right? And that one would be at 28. So I'd count that as our range from here all the way to the low. And to put the fit properly, let me just flip it to the low and that high. That's our range, right? That's our normal engineered range that after we get out of it, we're gonna seek one direction, and then once the final hour macro starts, it's gonna seek the other direction. So when we come all the way to this low, right? And if you just put it that far, if you're looking at price like this, what looks smooth? Doesn't this area now look smooth that the price will seek? Like, regardless if you don't have the information of we didn't take this sell side, we didn't take the 930, and because there was a bunch of relative equal lows here, all of that makes the conclusion that we're going to be seeking sell side, right? If we don't take this, right? Or if we make relative equal lows here or later, that you're going to have to kind of predict what the our macro is going to deliver, right? For this day, specifically when you made this low here at 223, let me just mark it right there, making this area the low hanging fruit objective. Think of the final hour macro as TGIF, right? It's trying to come back to 20 to 30% of the daily range. Okay, so if it's gonna go seek buy side again, right? Where could it go? And that was the missing information for this model. Where could it go, right? So now we know our range high and low. We're gonna need to just do the normal negative 0.5, right? And that would be right here. But if you want to get accurate, right? Because sometimes it's not going to reach it. And that was what missing for the model is when it doesn't reach it, do I wait? Do I let it go and reach it? Other than that, I won't have a trade. But no, if you get your event horizon, which is from this level to that high, and you work out the midpoint, you will see that the high would be at 272.75, which is the exact high here. If you see at the top, it's 272.75 to the tick, right? So now you can determine the high of the day. It's at the macro, right? Macro is ending the first macro. It went and seeked buy side. Right there, after that, you can enter on the 15-second, 1 minute, whatever. I'm going to show you how to enter a trade. You can enter a trade based on whatever. But you know where your stop loss is, because this is now presumably the high of the day, right? So when you have the high of the day, right, based on all this information that I outlined, think of the final hour macro trying to reach 20 to 30% of the range. So let's do that's 30%, and let's do 20% this way, right? I want to see where these levels kind of line up. Think about it as genuinely like TJF. Where do they line up? Where could price go? And what would happen, right, if price went from this level? Where's the next level that it could reach, right? Normally when I just do a normal trade, right, I kind of have like a basic rule. If there's a bunch of sell sides stacked up, right, this low, and this low, I would be looking for the first fair value gap that is just after the sell side. And you can see here there's this this is a suspension block, right? It's obvious suspension block that it could grow to, right? And that kind of lines up with the 30% other range. So I'd be expecting price to reach this as a low hanging fruit objective, maybe 20%, maybe this fair value gap above it. But if it's seeking sell side, which it should do, then I'm expecting 30% of the range, right? But to get more accurately, let's actually grade the range in the normal octants, right? And now that's a better way of doing it. So we're looking at where price could go between this high, right? And once it gets to the low, which octane it could go to and reside and stop, right? Looking at this range, this is where I expect price to stop. Where is the obvious octane? It's not there, right? It's just a trick question. It's the 16th, right? And the 16th lines up at 144.75. This low is 144.50. Missed it by one tick. I mean, it normally needs to deliver a tick or few after it, but that's how you get the final hour macro range, expecting the high of it and the low of it, as long as you got the the bias correctly, right? And the 16 is basically just the midpoint of the quadrant to the next octane right there. That would be your midpoint right there. So you don't need to have all these levels. You don't need to complicate it that much, but you just need to know where the high could be and where the low could be. So like you're not seeking a sell side that's outside of the range that it could do or the permissible range, right? You're looking for the low hanging fruit objective and you're looking at a terminus that would be obvious for price to go to. So I hope that was insightful, right? For the final hour macro in terms of the study. There's not really much other than that that I could explain for this type of day. Final hour macro happens a lot, and like I said, I'm mostly interested in the days where it doesn't give you an entry, right? And it's just running in one direction. I look you like the guaranteed trades way more than the ones that I'm like, okay, it could do this, right? I know it could stop here, but I would have preferred it if it went and cleaned everything up so I don't have anything against me in the trades. Okay. In terms of here, you have nothing against you in the trade. We've been taking buy side and we've been taking everything in terms of buy side the whole day since the start. So it's obvious that it will gonna go to sell side, right? Once you can get a measurement for what could be the high of the day and it hits it to the tick or respects it, and then you get what do you call it? A distribution in the other side, then you can have your stop loss that you know is safe. You have TPs that are obvious, and you have a terminus that's also obvious that after it reaches, then you ain't gonna touch anything, and they're all within specified time, right? At the from like 250, right, to 310, you're looking at the high to be formed. Does it form at the in that first macro? Yes, it does. And then for the rest, you're just looking at delivery, right? All the way till 4 p.m. Like I said, the last one can kind of bleed out, right? And it could bleed out all the way till the close if it wants to. But you're looking at this time, right? This one just missed it by a minute, but but it still counts. Regardless, you still got the low hanging fruit objective of this low and this low right there at 355, right? This little wick, that's where it needed to go, and it probably used news or whatever or something, just went into it and closed right there because that's the close of the day where we meant to go for the 20-30% of the range, right? So that's kind of the model for the final hour macro. It's got different variations depending on where the high is going to be, and sometimes the high doesn't need to be the high of the day, right? It could be a set of relative equal highs that it will go and bump, and that's more for another macro where it will be either the 315, right, leading out into like the 345, and then the final 10 minutes will do the delivery. So it'll be something like, let's say these were relative equal highs, and then by 345 we'll make that kind of high, and then start delivering in the last 10 minutes against just these lows, and it would be something not that significant, 30 40 points, but your stop loss will be small, and I guess you can just have higher contracts in it. I want to keep the study longer. This is just it for the final hour macro, but I'll keep on improving this, improving my other models, whatever, until I can get more accuracy per se. And yeah, that's the market study. Peace out.